Sony just announced two new cameras and one new lens, which are the Sony A7C Mark II, the Sony A7CR, and the Sony 16-35 f2.8 GM Mark II. Now, after that announcement, I have decided that I am going to sell my Sony A7 IV and get the Sony A7C Mark II. And here's why. But before we continue, if you are new to the channel, hi, my name is Nico. I create videos about camera gear, audio equipment, and desk setups. I'm not a professional photographer or videographer. I used to professionally edit at a podcast company, but all the opinions here on my channel is from the perspective of an everyday tech dad. And if you're interested in those kinds of videos, consider subscribing. Now, back to this camera. Now, just a background if you haven't been following the channel, recently I downsized from the A7S III to the ZV-E1, mainly to lighten the load when I travel with my family. Now, once I sold my A7S III, I picked up the A7 IV just to balance out, my 12 megapixel setup. When I was still using my Sony A7S III for photography, more specifically, when I take photos of my kids during their sports practices, sports tournaments, I found that I wanted to creatively crop heavily on some of the photos, but with the 12 megapixel sensor, it's not always possible and you lose so much resolution. That's the reason why I picked up the Sony A7 IV. And I've been loving it so much and I've been using it mainly for photos. Now, I also love bringing a camera everywhere we go, whether that's, a family dinner or just walking around the park or walking around the mall with a family or friends. I always bring a camera with me. And I wanted to try out bringing the A7 IV again because of the 33 megapixel to take photos outside, but sometimes I just decide on not bringing it because it's just too heavy. Which brings me to the reasons why I wanted to switch to the A7C Mark II instead of keeping the A7 IV. Reason number one is its size. Now, again, I've mentioned I've downsized from the A7S III to the ZV-E1, and it looks like I'm going to do the same with the A7 IV. Now, the Sony A7 IV weighs 659 grams, and the Sony A7C Mark II, they say, weighs 514 grams. Now, on paper, that doesn't look too much of a difference, but when you're actually using it, as I've experienced with the A7S III and a ZV-E1, it is a huge difference, especially if you plan to, put the camera in your bag and walk for like a whole day activity or whole day tour. Then yeah, believe me, it's a big difference. Reason number two, well, it's technically because I think 80 or 90% of A7C II is still the A7 IV. I still get to use the 33 megapixel sensor and the 7K downsample to 4K image when taking videos. You still could shoot at 4K 60p with a 1.5 times crop and 1080p up to 120 frames per second. You've got 10 frames per second burst in photos using the mechanical and electronic shutter. I still get to use the Sony NP-FZ100 batteries, and like the A7 IV, the A7C Mark II is weather sealed. So that's reason number two. Technically, I am still getting an A7 IV just in a smaller body. Now, reason number three is the AI features that is possible because of the AI chip. Now, this means I will get better autofocus on the A7C Mark II compared to the A7 IV, which has amazing autofocus already. But for the A7C Mark II, you'll have more tracking options like bird, animal, cars, trains, and all those additional upgrades when it came to the AI chip that started in the Sony A7R5. It will also have the auto reframing feature, which I can use if ever I want that dynamic moving shot and I don't have anyone with me to do that for me. And my favorite feature of all is the updated clear image zoom, which allows me to use clear image zoom and keep the tracking capability of the camera. That is awesome. Now, the fourth reason I am switching to the A7C Mark II is the ability to load user LUTs. Now, I use custom LUTs to color correct and color grade my videos, and it's nice to see at least a color-corrected image while shooting. Now, this was possible even before by using a monitor, but again, I want to downsize my kit and not bring a monitor anywhere I go, especially if I'm on a vacation. So having the ability to preview the image with a LUT already in the image in camera is a huge deal for me. Now, reason number 5 is the ability to control a lot of settings using the touchscreen. Now, one of the fears I had when switching from the A7S III to the ZV-E1 is the ZV-E1's lack of buttons and dials. But the ability of having a touchscreen which you can use to adjust a lot of settings kind of compensated for that lack of buttons. Now, what I'm excited for in the Sony A7C Mark II is that you've got more buttons and dials in the ZV-E1, but you also have the ability to change settings using the touchscreen, which means I'm going to have a lot of flexibility in mapping out those custom buttons and custom dials to really, dial in my workflow when it comes to using the camera. Now, there's one more reason that is not actually my reason, but might be a reason for a lot of people, and this is the 4K 30 during live streaming using the USB-C cable. Now, if you don't know, a lot of Sony cameras can now be used as a webcam just by using a USB-C cable. No more capture card needed. But on the A7C Mark II, you're able to do it by using 4K 30, which you cannot do in the Sony A7 IV. So that's an additional reason that you might consider when deciding to switch from the A7 IV to the A7C. So tell me what you think about the new products announced by Sony. Are you thinking of getting any of it? A7C Mark II, A7C-R, and the 16-35 f2.8 G Master Mark II. Comment down below, let me know what you think. And if you want to check out other videos about camera gear, audio equipment, and desk setups, please check out my other videos here.